40 years ago, this couple was the most glamorous duo on television. Today, one of them is 96 and still alive, but the faces around them have been vanishing one by one. 5 are gone now.
Hello, darling.
Hi, darling.
Your timing couldn't have been any better.
One guest star, at 75, just won her first Oscar this year. And one cast member was hours from death before the cameras ever rolled. 14 names, some still here, some long gone. Susan Bay, Susan Kendall. We begin with Susan Bay, who guest starred as Susan Kendall, and who would one day marry a genuine science fiction god. But before that, off-screen, she became something rarer than a star. Susan Bay was one of the original 6, a small group of women who banded together in 1979 to pry open the male-dominated doors of the Directors Guild of America and demand a place for female filmmakers. It was a fight that changed Hollywood, and her name is woven into it.
Think about how many wonderful independent films have been made with Anthony Hopkins, Christopher Plummer, now what was it called with Michael Douglas and Alan Arkin?
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
Yes, because
she came from a famous family too. She's the first cousin of blockbuster director Michael Bay, and her son Aaron grew up to become the head of Warner Records, one of the most powerful jobs in the music business. But her most famous chapter began when she married Leonard Nimoy, Star Trek's beloved Mr. Spock. The two were devoted to each other, often working side by side on his celebrated photography, and they stayed together until Nimoy died in 2015. She poured her grief into writing and directing a film of her own.
I isolated, I rarely got out of bed, and J.J. Abrams, who had directed a couple of Star Trek movies and is known for directing Star Wars, called me on the phone. He was very close to Leonard, and he said, when you feel like writing, I've got an office for you at Bad Robot. And I said, when I can get out of bed, I'll call you.
A project about aging and mourning. Susan Bay Nimoy is 83 and she's still alive. But while Susan Bay married her way into fame, the next woman on our list once came within a single step of earning it all on her own. Karen Carlson, Marcy Fowler. Karen Carlson, who played Marcy Fowler, came heartbreakingly close to becoming Miss America. She finished first runner-up in the 1964 pageant representing the state of Arkansas, losing the crown by the narrowest of margins. Hollywood came calling instead, and she traded the runway for the soundstage.
I'm an observer. I love to watch. So in observing them and not being able to freely ask the questions that are running through my head, I then make up stories. It
turned out to be the right move. She acted opposite Robert Redford in the political classic The Candidate, squared off against Chuck Norris in The Octagon,
No se detenga.
Quiero ver quiénes son.
and became a familiar recurring face on Dallas and In the Heat of the Night.
Everything's been taken care of. There's also a message for you, Miss Renard.
She also married into television royalty, wedding Starsky and Hutch heartthrob David Soul.
People who settle for second best. Russ didn't. Then why are you raising your voice?
Because you're making it sound like it's my fault.
Is it?
Of course not. Russ did exactly what Russ wanted to.
Including marrying you after you got pregnant.
And raising a son with him before the two eventually went their separate ways. In her later years, Carlson did something many actors only dream of. She stepped behind the camera herself, becoming a director and producer.
Because I was born and raised in Louisiana, very poor. My father saw me when I was 18 months old. And my imagination, we didn't have much. My imagination was probably my best friend.
And choosing her projects on her own terms. Karen Carlson is 81 and she's still alive. Yet even a near Miss America couldn't match what the next woman had already conquered long before Hart to Hart ever found her. Shelley Smith, Marina Belson. Just 3 days after giving birth, Shelley Smith faced every parent's worst nightmare. She and her husband lost their newborn son, Justin, a private heartbreak almost none of her fans ever knew about.
You know, it could be wrong that I'm so impressed by success. But on the other hand, maybe the fact that I admit it makes it okay. I mean, I don't make any bones about it, so there's no reason to worry about it. I mean, maybe... What's the matter?
Sarah, you just got undressed in front of me.
No, I did not. Not completely. Anyway, so what?
It's the kind of loss that reshapes a life, and it quietly reshaped hers.
I was out all night at a formal affair at his place.
On screen, the woman who played Marina Belson moved with the effortless poise of the supermodel she'd been before acting ever crossed her mind. Represented by the prestigious Ford agency, she'd graced the covers of Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, Glamour, and Mademoiselle. When she turned to acting, she starred beside a very young Martin Short in the sitcom The Associates.
Tucker, look, boys have been doing this to me ever since I was in the 8th grade. But sooner or later, Tucker, you have to draw the line. And I'm drawing it now. Leave me alone, Tucker. Just go away.
And became a fixture on game shows across the dial.
Virgin. Things that things that are innocent.
And then she did something almost unheard of in Hollywood. At the height of her fame, she walked away. She earned a master's degree in psychology, became a marriage and fertility specialist, and founded an international egg donor program, devoting the rest of her life to helping other couples build the families she understood the painful cost of. Shelley Smith died of heart failure in 2023 at 70, with her husband and her 2 children holding her hand. She left the spotlight by her own choice, but the next actress was born directly into it, the daughter of one of Hollywood's true legends, Julie Cobb, Scotty McClane. Julie Cobb, who guest starred as Scotty McClane, was Hollywood royalty from the day she was born. Her father was Lee J. Cobb, the man who originated Willie Loman on Broadway in Death of a Salesman, and who delivered one of the most unforgettable performances in On the Waterfront. Her mother was a respected Yiddish theater actress. Acting was in her blood. But Julie carved out her own strange little place in television history. She holds an unusual distinction among Star Trek fans. She was the only female red shirt ever killed off on the original series. She played the mother on the first season of Charles in Charge and turned up everywhere from Magnum P.I. to Knots Landing. And here's the twist that ties this very countdown together. One of her 3 husbands was actor Victor French, who himself appeared as a guest on Hart to Hart, and who millions remember from Little House on the Prairie. She would later marry James Cromwell, the Oscar-nominated star of Babe. Julie Cobb is 78, and she's still alive. And we're still inching closer to the guest star, who at 75 stunned all of Hollywood this year by winning her very first Oscar. But first, the woman who once played a king's greatest scandal, Cynthia Harris, Amanda. Cynthia Harris once played the woman who convinced a king to surrender an empire. As Wallace Simpson in the acclaimed miniseries Edward and Mrs. Simpson, she portrayed the twice-divorced American socialite that a British king willingly gave up his throne to marry, the love affair that shook the monarchy to its foundations. The role made her famous across Britain, earned her a BAFTA nomination, and is still considered one of the definitive screen portrayals of that real-life royal drama. On Hart to Hart, that same commanding presence turned up in the role of Amanda. But a whole other generation knows her from somewhere far warmer. She was Sylvia Buckman, the wonderfully overbearing, deeply loving mother of Paul Reiser's character on the hit sitcom Mad About You, a role she played for years and happily returned to when the show was revived decades later. Away from the camera, she was a passionate woman of the theater, co-founding her own New York stage company and pouring herself into dozens of productions. Cynthia Harris died in 2021 at 87. She gave a king's forbidden love story its voice. But the next guest star on our list gave the entire world a song, and to this day, almost nobody realizes it was her. Amanda McBroom, Blair Craddock. Here's a real, wait, what moment. Amanda McBroom guest starred as Blair Craddock, and millions upon millions of people know her work intimately, without ever once knowing her name. She wrote The Rose. When Bette Midler recorded that aching ballad for the 1979 film of the same name, it climbed to #1 all over the world and won Amanda McBroom the Golden Globe for Best Original Song. In the years since, it's been recorded by everyone from Judy Collins to LeAnn Rimes to Conway Twitty, a song so woven into the culture that people assume it has simply always existed. The woman who appeared in a single episode of Hart to Hart had quietly authored one of the most beloved songs in American history. The daughter of a film actor herself, she went on to a long and celebrated career as a cabaret performer and songwriter. Even today, millions of people can sing that chorus from memory, and yet very few of them have any idea that the woman who wrote it once stepped into the world of Hart to Hart. Amanda McBroom is 78, and she's still alive. And that surprise brings us at last to the moment you've been waiting for since the very first seconds of this video. Amy Madigan, Adele. Stop the countdown for just a second. Remember the Oscar winner we promised you at the very beginning? This is her. Amy Madigan guest starred as Adele, and back then, nobody watching could have imagined what was coming. The daughter of a Chicago news broadcaster, she earned her first Academy Award nomination in 1985 for Twice in a Lifetime. Then she became a national favorite as Annie Kinsella, the fiercely loyal wife in Field of Dreams, and starred opposite John Candy in the comedy classic Uncle Buck. In 1983, while filming Places in the Heart, she married actor Ed Harris, beginning one of the longest and most admired marriages in all of Hollywood. And then, in March of this year, a full 40 years after that first nomination, Amy Madigan finally won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress for her chilling, unforgettable turn as the unhinged Aunt Gladys in the horror film Weapons. It's one of the longest gaps between Oscar nominations in the entire history of the awards, and when she took the stage, she joked that the difference this time was simple. Now she had the little gold guy in her hand. Amy Madigan is 75, still very much alive, and now, at long last, an Academy Award winner. That's your payoff. But somehow, the biggest surprises of all are still ahead, including the cast member who was hours from being put to death before ever becoming a star. Nicholas Pryor, Hans. If you grew up watching movies in the 1980s, you've almost certainly seen Nicholas Pryor dozens of times without ever once knowing his name. He quietly became the most famous movie father you've never been able to name. He played Tom Cruise's dad in Risky Business, the man whose Porsche ends up at the bottom of Lake Michigan, and the estranged, heartbroken father of Robert Downey Jr. in Less Than Zero. And here's a small strange coincidence that links this list to another beloved classic. Years before Hart to Hart, Pryor played the hapless husband of Barbara Feldon, TV's Agent 99 from Get Smart in the film Smile. He spent decades as a soap opera fixture, anchoring hundreds of episodes of daytime drama, and recurred on Beverly Hills 90210 for a new generation of fans. His career spanned nearly 70 years and almost 175 screen credits. Nicholas Pryor died of cancer in 2024 at 89. In a note he left behind, to be read only after his death, he wrote that he was enormously grateful to have been for nearly 7 decades a working actor. He spent a lifetime playing other people's fathers. The next man spent a lifetime as one of daytime television's most beloved leading men, John Riley, Billingsley. John Riley, who appeared as Billingsley, found his true immortality in daytime television. For nearly 3 decades, he played WSB agent and police commissioner Sean Donnelly on General Hospital, a charismatic, square-jawed leading man that soap fans still talk about with real affection. He was also Kelly's father on Beverly Hills 90210, slipping easily between primetime and daytime across a career that touched 6 different decades. Off-screen, he was first and foremost a family man. He married his Swedish-born wife in 1981 and raised 5 daughters, one of whom, the comedian and actress Caitlin Riley, has become a star in her own right. It was Caitlin who announced her father's passing, writing simply that the brightest light in the world had gone out, and asking everyone to imagine the best person they knew, and then imagine that person being their dad. John Riley died in 2021 at 86. We're now just one step away from the cast member who was hours from being euthanized. But there's one more guest star first, and she became a face of science fiction itself. Joanna Cassidy, Belle. Joanna Cassidy guest starred as Belle, and then went on to become a genuine icon, not once, but twice over. In 1982, she played the replicant Zora in Ridley Scott's Blade Runner, a performance so legendary that a quarter-century later she was brought back to refilm her own death scene for the film's definitive final cut. She didn't stop there. She brought sass, warmth, and real heart to Who Framed Roger Rabbit as Dolores, opposite Bob Hoskins. She won a Golden Globe for the short-lived but adored sitcom Buffalo Bill and appeared opposite Gene Hackman and Nick Nolte in Under Fire. And decades on, she found yet another devoted audience as the wickedly funny, fiercely independent matriarch Margaret Chenoweth on HBO's groundbreaking 6 Feet Under. A former model with 2 children, she's never really slowed down. Joanna Cassidy is 80 years old and she's still working today. And now we've reached the final 4, and every single name still ahead is someone Hart to Hart fans talk about to this day. The first of them is the one we've been teasing since the very beginning of this video, the cast member who was only hours from death before becoming a television star. Freeway, the family dog. Number 4 isn't a person at all. It's Freeway, the Hart's beloved family dog who appeared faithfully in all 5 seasons of the show. And his real story just might be the most surprising one on this entire list. His real name was Charlie Gray, and he was a Lochen, a rare fluffy little breed whose name is German for little lion, and one so uncommon at the time that most viewers had never seen one before. But his trainer didn't find him at a fancy kennel or an exclusive breeder. He found him at an animal shelter, already under a sentence of death, just hours away from being put down forever. Picture it for a moment. A tiny shelter dog sitting in a cage, completely unaware that his life was now being measured in hours. Then one visitor stopped, looked twice, and saw something nobody else had. The trainer later said it was the little dog's bright, hopeful eyes and his stubborn, irrepressible love of life that saved him. That one look, and he simply knew he'd found his star. Then came the perfect Hollywood twist. The show's writers gave Freeway a backstory to mirror his real one, making him a stray the Harts had rescued from the side of a freeway, which is exactly how he earned his name on screen. And audiences fell hard for him. A shelter dog who'd escaped death by a matter of hours became one of the most famous and beloved pets on all of 1980s television, with fans who tuned in as much for the dog as for the mysteries. And here's something worth remembering. Unlike the stars we've been discussing all this time, Freeway never chased fame or fought for a role. He was simply lucky to be alive, and that's exactly why people loved him. Freeway was the warm, beating heart of the Hart household, but the soul of the show and its unmistakable voice belonged to the man at number 3, Lionel Stander, Max. Lionel Stander played Max, the gravel-voiced major domo, chauffeur, and cook who narrated the open of every single episode, growling to audiences week after week that when these two got together, it was moida. He was the comic glue of the entire show, and while Freeway had escaped death by a matter of hours, Max, the man behind him, had survived something very different, one of the darkest chapters in Hollywood history. A founding member of the Screen Actors Guild, Stander was branded a communist sympathizer during the Red Scare and dragged before the House Un-American Activities Committee. When they demanded he name names, he refused. And he did it with a wit and defiance that's still famous today, turning the questioning back on his accusers. For that refusal, he was blacklisted for roughly 15 years, one of the longest blacklistings in the entire history of Hollywood. Unable to find work as an actor, he survived by working as a stockbroker on Wall Street. Then, slowly and stubbornly, he rebuilt his entire career overseas in Europe, taking stage and film roles wherever he could find them, before finally coming home, decades later, to find the role of a lifetime in Max, which won him a Golden Globe. He was married 6 times across his long life. Lionel Stander died in 1994 at 86. After 15 years in exile, many blacklisted actors never recovered at all. Stander didn't just recover, he came back to become one of the most beloved characters on all of television. He was the voice that opened every single episode. But the woman at number 2 was its beating heart, and her real life held more tragedy than any mystery the Harts ever solved. Stefanie Powers, Jennifer Hart. Stefanie Powers played the fearless, elegant, impossibly glamorous Jennifer Hart, all while privately carrying more grief than her dazzling character ever faced on screen. Born to Polish parents in Hollywood, she'd already built a real career before the Harts, even starring as April Dancer in the spy series The Girl from UNCLE. But it was Heart to Heart that made her a household name, and it was during that very run that her world quietly fell apart. The great love of her life was the screen legend William Holden. In November 1981, right in the middle of the show's run, Holden died alone after a fall in his apartment. And then, just 17 days later, Natalie Wood, the wife of her co-star Robert Wagner, drowned off the California coast. 2 devastating losses, less than 3 weeks apart, struck the show's 2 stars at almost the same moment. Powers and Wagner held each other up through the darkest period of both their lives. In Holden's memory, she founded a wildlife conservation foundation in Kenya, and she still serves as its president to this very day. A longtime smoker, she faced down and survived lung cancer in 2009. She never had children of her own. Stefanie Powers is 83 years old, and she's not only still alive, she's still performing on the stage. And that shared tragedy, those 2 losses 17 days apart, would permanently bind her to the man waiting for us at number 1. Robert Wagner, Jonathan Hart. And finally, number 1. Robert Wagner, the charming, self-made millionaire, Jonathan Hart. Behind that easy golden smile was a lifetime defined by one enduring heartbreak, Natalie Wood. He married her, divorced her, and then, against all odds, married her again. The two were one of Hollywood's great love stories, the golden couple everyone rooted for. Then, on that November night in 1981, Wood drowned off Catalina Island following a boat outing with Wagner aboard. The case was reopened decades later, and Wagner was named a person of interest before being formally cleared in 2022. Through all of it, Wood's own daughter, whom Wagner lovingly raised as his own after her mother's death, has defended him fiercely, insisting that he would have given his own life to save her. But there is so much more to his story than that one terrible loss. He grew up in Bel Air, caddying for stars like Fred Astaire, before signing with a major studio as a young man. And he became a true television pioneer, a star across It Takes a Thief, Switch, and Heart to Heart. He delighted entirely new generations as the eye-patched villain number 2 in the Austin Powers films, and as Anthony DiNozzo Sr. on NCIS. And he found lasting love again, marrying actress Jill St. John in 1990, a partnership that has now quietly outlasted all the heartbreak that came before it, and become the longest and happiest of his life. At 96, Robert Wagner remains the last living leading man of one of television's most glamorous eras. And remarkably, after everything he endured, the loss, the suspicion, the decades of grief, he is still here. 14 names. 5 of the actors are gone now, along with Freeway, the little rescue dog who beat the odds by a matter of hours. But Jonathan and Jennifer themselves, Robert Wagner and Stefanie Powers, are both still with us, bound together by a friendship that was forged in a tragedy that struck them both within 17 days of each other. More than 40 years later, millions of us still remember them all. Jonathan, Jennifer, gruff old Max, and one little rescue dog named Freeway. The mysteries may have ended long ago, but the memories never did. Which cast member surprised you the most? Tell us in the comments below, and stay a while, because we've got more classic television stories just like this one waiting for you.